All right, everybody, let's get started. What?
All right. Yeah, right, exactly. Now that I've sufficiently freaked everyone out, yes. Okay, so I am intentionally, first of all, thank you all for your attention. I understand, especially in an age where our minds are formed by the efficiency of technology, that's coming and hearing a ton of info packed in last night, and then a ton packed into that talk I just gave is not easy. So, but I'm pretty good at reading audiences, and you guys have been so attentive, and I'm really grateful for that. Thanks for hanging with me, as I've been a little bit of drinking from a fire hose, maybe a fire hydrant. So thank you for that. But I'm intentionally here. Going to conclude with a shorter talk with just a couple guiding principles, because I actually think the best way for us to end the weekend, and I'm preaching tomorrow, so but in this part, is actually to do Q&A, flesh it out, and such, because we're talking about a better way forward, and it just ends up bringing so many questions about, you personally. I know parents and grandparents, like, man, what do I do with my kids, all stuff like that. So I'm going to be briefer with the content itself to allow us some extra time. Maybe it looks like I'll probably be able to have like maybe a half hour. We don't have to use all the time. If you're just exhausted and want to go home, we can go home. But I want to allow time for us to talk, because I think it's probably the best way to flesh out some of the practicalities of how do we do this right, is just together in community asking questions and discussing. So the heavy stuff is over. I've got a little bit to say here, and then we'll talk. I do have a hard cutoff, though, and I'm going over to your school. What'd you say? Push. I'm going to Push Academy. I'm going over there right after this. Huh?
Upper campus.
I'm going to the upper campus, which is 15 minutes away, I was told, to record some videos for your school. Which I think is a cool idea. So, but I do have a hard cutoff for that. So, but let's jump in here. So, yeah. Now that I've freaked everybody out, let's discuss a way forward. Let's get practical. In my first talk, if you remember, I said the answer is not to retreat from our technological society, nor is it to uncritically receive our technological society. Instead, the aim is to redeem. And the way to redeem, I'm going to argue, is to reclaim. The way you redeem something is to reclaim it for God. To reclaim what our sinful world has done to technology by living out God's design for technology. Again, technology is morally neutral. It is an instrument of human agency. And so you, the user, determine whether technology is a moral good or a moral evil. And so we redeem technology by reclaiming technology for God's glory and the good of ourselves and others. But what does that even mean? Too much theory. Can we just get practical and discuss how to do it? It's okay if you're thinking that. The consistent, fair criticism of my content is, you're all up here, sounds fun, but like, can you come down here and tell us actually something practical? That's what I'm going to do. All right. What I'm going to do is boil this entire discussion down. We're talking about how to reclaim technology and in this way redeem technology. I am going to boil the entire discussion down to two unique aspects of technology that are proving to be a threat to mentality, community, and sexuality. It's not like this fallen, sinful world this world has always been threatening to mentality, community, and sexuality. But what is unique about this technological threat to these things? At the end of the day, there are two things that I think what we are facing is unprecedented. What we now consume offers us a boundless world and an anonymous world. A boundless world and an anonymous world, which is a first for us as humans. Both of those themes continually came out in different ways in each of the topics that we discussed. And so I firmly believe our practical counsel moving forward needs to be directed toward these two areas specifically. We got to aim our changed habits and repentance and so forth in these two areas specifically. Let me show you what I mean. First, consider the boundless nature of technology. So when I was going through each of those three harms to community, mentality, sexuality, I talked about how it is unsustainable and detrimental to do each of these technologically because of the limitless nature of technology. So mentality, I discussed how boundless, limitless information is harming our minds. Community, I talked about how we cannot sustain limitless friends online, limitless connections to us, and so forth. Sexuality, I talked about what's different now is that pornographic exploitation now has no limits, no boundaries, and it is leading to unprecedented sexual deviancy and harm. The internet has removed, and soon it will be worse with AI, has removed historic limits, and we are suffering for it. The other repeated theme in technology that came out is that it's not just a boundless reality, it appears to be, good point that was made in the last Q&A, it's not really this, but it gives the illusion of it's not just boundless, it's anonymous. Meaning, the limitless world of technology is available for us to indulge in secrecy. That too is a first for humanity, and that too is dangerous. Going all the way back to Genesis, what was the first instinct after the fall? It was to hide. Their eyes were open, they saw that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves to cover themselves. That imagery is conveying that before they were naked but had nothing to hide, but now they're hiding. And then they also hide from God. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden, hiding. Hiding from each other, hiding from God. Hiding is the default of our fallen condition. And it's in this hiddenness, in this anonymousness, anonymity, where the true measure of our sinfulness will manifest itself. In the secrecy of our own minds, we think that which we would never express. In secrecy, when no one is watching, we do that which we would never do if someone were watching. Well, historically, that secrecy was somewhat limited, but technology has created a virtual world of secrecy. It is the ultimate fig leaf, so to speak. No exposure, no embarrassment. The old saying, have you no shame? Well, now the answer is no. We have a place to hide with no shame. The vitriol of what people will say anonymously online when there's no way they would ever say that to a real person. The perversion of what people will view when there is no way they would ever view that if someone were viewing them. The stalking and envy of others for hours on end when there is no way you would do that in real life. You know all this to be true. And if you don't know it, if you don't believe it, then just ask, what would be your response if your online life was exposed in real life for all to see? Just you show up on a Sunday morning and the pastor says, we did some deep searching and we have chosen you and we've put your last month activity up on the screen. You would pack up, leave town, and never show your face here again. You know that you are someone different within the anonymous space created by technology. And so, boiling down the uniqueness of our technological age in its simplest form, for the first time in human history, we have created a world that is both boundless and anonymous. Therefore, in light of this, if you were to ask me how Christians can practically engage technology in a healthy way, in a God-honoring, redemptive way, I think we have to focus our attention on those two unique features of technology. Every Christian, everyone who calls Jesus Lord and wants to honor him in all that they do, including what they do with their technology, every Christian must take steps to place boundaries on the boundless nature of technology and bring exposure to the anonymous nature of technology. I am trying to be as simple and practical as I can for you, and I really do think it is that simple. If you just do those two practical steps, it will radically change the nature of your usage and consequently redeem the goodness of technology in your lives. What do I mean by boundaries to combat the technology's boundless appeal? You, with the help of trusted community, have to get very, very intentional about your screen usage. Your screen is a door into a limitless world. It's not going to limit itself for you. In fact, by its dopamine design, it is seeking to ensnare you. It wants you to get addicted to its endless, limitless offerings. So, unlike the real world, which naturally is limited, and we don't have to think about these things, you're going to have to get intentional with the virtual world. You're going to have to intentionally limit the limitless world of technology. And I emphasize intentionally here. Take the time, again, with the help of others parents, spouses, have this conversation together. With the help or friendship or small group at a church, somebody. Take the time with the help of others who know you and love you the most, take the time to create an intentional, appropriate plan of usage. I will use myself as an example. Much of my day, my phone is at least on Do Not Disturb, but often, depending upon the task, in full airplane mode. I'm just going to show you how, I'm using myself as an example to show you how intentional I'm talking about it when I talk about boundaries. In my schedule, I have blocks of time set aside to return emails and texts and so forth. Chad probably got really frustrated with me not responding. It's hard to be honest, asking me questions, trying to work out logistics, stuff like that. I am frustratingly slow in my responses. Why? Because literally in my day, in my calendar, I have time set aside to return emails and texts and so forth. And once that is completed, I switch my phone to airplane mode to give singular focus to my calling. And throughout the day, this is how intentional I am, I have scheduled times with technology. I literally schedule it into my day. Even something like social media. I'm not active on social media much at all, but because of my job, as you know, somewhat of a cultural commentator and critic in Kentucky, I do need to stay connected to cultural news developments and so forth. If that was not a part of my work, I don't think I would use social media at all. But I have built into my calendar a literal appointment with Twitter, with X. I go through the feed, check out what's being talked about, discussed, bookmark articles I want to come back to and read and so forth. It's a scheduled appointment, and once it's over, my time with Twitter is over. You get the point. Intentional, boundaries, accountability. This is what you must do. Now, it's going to look different for everyone. What I'm asking for, I'm not advocating for legalism, but I kind of am. So legalism is when I would say, here are my rules, and you have to follow those rules if you want to be a good Christian. That's Pharisaical legalism there. It's not legalistic for you to put together a plan and follow it to every jot and tittle. Jot and tittle, that was the wrong word. Every to the letter of the law, following this plan that works for you. You've got to establish your own boundaries that work for your own unique calling. But the boundaries must be there, or you will drift into the boundless. You are not strong enough to resist the drift into technology's boundless nature. And that's just my work day, where I need to grow. Confession time. Where I need to grow and repent is my family time. I'm pretty good during the day. But my wife has rightly recently been noticed me zoning out in her presence or the presence of our children. And that's easy, right? Hard day's work. I just want to escape. And you probably work hard at your school or your job or just life demands, and you just want to escape. But even leisure needs boundaries. And so one of our Christmas gifts this year, my kid's least favorite Christmas gift, was a family charging station. And it was a cute one. My wife found it online. It's just like this wicker basket that, you it has a slot for your phones, and it's aesthetically cute. But our kids, we'll get to parenting and say, but our kids' phones live there until, we do boundaries for them too. But me, so we're talking about me here. We got this charging station, and so my commitment is it remains there. I come home from work. My first thing is the phone goes to that family charging station, and it remains there until the kids go to bed. I'm allowed to look at it for a bit once the kids go to sleep, but then I have our whole family has a cutoff time every night. That includes me, where it goes back to the station, and that phone is not touched from when I get out of bed, when I go to bed at night until I've gotten the kids up to school and spend time with Jesus in the morning. Now, that's the new plan in the Cunningham household. I don't want to be a hypocrite here, self-righteous here. I'm struggling with that plan. Okay, so so you can pray for me, and pray for my wife who's holding me accountable. But I'm only letting you into my life to help you see, like, how intentional and thoughtful you have to be with boundaries. Boundaries. Establish them in your life so that you are in charge of your screen and not the other way around, which is what God intended it to be. Image bearers are supposed to be in charge of technology. Technology is not supposed to be in charge of image bearers. That comes when you set boundaries to technology. Okay, secondly, you must take steps to bring exposure to the anonymous nature of technology. We were not meant to live in the darkness, but in the light. I don't trust myself to handle anonymity, nor should you. So at minimum, my spouse knows the passwords to my phone and accounts. There's nothing I hide from her. I don't have any part of my life that is closed off and only accessible to me. But that's bare minimum. Take it further. I expose all of my activity to trusted friendships. Michael Blackson's one of them. There is no screen I have access to that does not have screen monitoring software installed. A lot of the way to fight technology is to use technology against itself. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. I use Covenant Eyes, which has worked well for me and my family. If you're not familiar with it, it's just a monitoring software where you give up access to your screen, and it screenshots all your activity throughout the day. And it's gotten pretty good. It certainly will red flag anything obscene, or even it's pretty good technology, even something that verges on obscene, and it will send an email to my accountability partners with a red flag that I'm viewing something that's inappropriate. And I want that accountability. I've been living in sobriety for decades now, and in pornography sobriety for decades now, but I still want that accountability over my life. But more than that, more than accountability over something inappropriate, I want my friends, my trusted friends, to be able to look through the entire report and just see how I'm spending my time. Am I lost in meaningless content? Am I addicted to trivial? When am I logging on and looking at a screen and so forth? I just love eliminating the anonymous nature of my screen usage. It's incredibly vulnerable, but it's good for me, and it would be good for you. So it doesn't have to be Covenant Eyes. There's plenty of stuff. You're going to have to do your research. Part of the problem, parents, is your kids know all this. You're just going to, it's worth you got to get informed. There's plenty, again, use technology against itself. There's plenty of YouTube videos. Just Google search. There's plenty of stuff that you can go and research all this on your own. There's tons of stuff out there. It's a lucrative business because everybody's freaking out about this right now, especially parents, and so there's a lot of stuff out there. The most recent one that's come on the scene that people are raving about is Bark. I don't know if you've heard of Bark, but Bark I'm hearing a ton of good stuff about it. But you do the research, find what works, but you are not made to live in anonymity, and you will not flourish as a human being, nor be faithful as a follower of Jesus, living in an anonymous world. You have to have exposure in your life. So, rather than a long list of Christian rules for you to follow, I'm trying to be as simple and practical as I possibly can by boiling it down to just 2 practical principles. I am telling you, if you will just intentionally combat the boundless and anonymous nature of modern technology, you will naturally use technology well and thus redeem its purposes. And if you're a parent here, and we can flesh out parenting more in the Q&A, but I'll brief word here. If you're a parent here, you're going to have to do that work for your children. I want my parenting advice to also be practical and simple as possible without giving you a long list of what you should be doing. And so let's not overthink this. Let's not overcomplicate this as parents. You also are going to have to place boundaries on their usage and bring exposure to their usage. Boundaries, intentional, thoughtfully decide what is appropriate amount of usage for your children. Do the research, talk to parents you respect, talk to pastors, whatever. The problem is that parents aren't even having this discussion. Have the discussion, come to a conclusion, decide what is an appropriate amount of usage for our children. I'm not going to make that decision for you. But if you want to know what we do, our kids get very, very little screen time during the school week. Most of the time, no screens at all. There's definitely a difference between our 8-year-old and 16-year-old. But during the week, pretty much we're a screenless home. There are times when, the homework, it's a light homework work, or we don't have practices or games, something like that, it's fun night, whatever, and we'll allow that. Or, frankly, if Abby and I just need to catch our breath and just, I don't know, kids, I'll let you look at the screen. But pretty much during the week, we're a screenless home. During the weekend, we let them enjoy it more, but it still does not dominate their weekend in any way. But you create those boundaries, you create that plan of implementation for your children. And by the way, the devices that they have are actually pretty good. Every one of your children's devices, every one of ours they're Apple devices, iPads, iPhones, so forth, and they have great options to limit screen time usage. You probably know that. If you don't, you should know that. Each of my children's profiles are under my family plan. I have a complete control over how much time they get when the screens are shut off at night. Even the option to get on my phone and shut it all off. I can just, with one click, shut off all of their devices. So last night, I'm 2 hours behind back home. And so last night when I got done with my talks, I had a bunch of screen time requests from my kids who are back home with the grandparents who are, of course, the grandparents are saying, yeah, I don't care, but I still got them. I still got them from afar. And so I just had text after text after text. Charlie's asking for more time on this app. And just nope. Hang out with your grandparents. So I have complete control is the point I'm trying to say. Do your homework. Do your homework. I know it's hard. I know it's overwhelming. Do your homework. Familiarize yourself with those options. If you're a person who gets screen, if you get technology and you know all the ins and outs of this and stuff like that, I have an incredibly lucrative small business for you. I convinced a guy back in Lexington to do this. He's a college student, Christian, great guy, tech guy. He started a small business where parents basically will pay him to come in and just sit down with phones and softwares and teach them everything and create those boundaries and set it up and teach them, just like you have to teach them how to use a remote, we'll teach you how to do this, and teach them all of that stuff. And I'm telling you, parents love it because it's just so overwhelming. But grab a college kid from your church and say, would you come over, let me cook you a meal, and can we get out our phones and iPads and you just teach me all of this? You got to get informed, create those boundaries. All right, second, exposure. Exposure, same thing that I said for us, we apply to our children. They should, never, ever, ever should they have access to any unmonitored screen. Again, we use Covenant Eyes in our family, but there are several great options to use technology against the harms of technology, but no family should have any screen that goes unmonitored. Now, in the early years, they should never be alone with the screen physically alone with a screen. But in the teenage years, and if you want during the Q&A, if you want to talk about how we progress with freedoms and technology, we can get into that. But in the teenage years, where they do need to learn how to appropriately use device on their own, you give them more freedom, but never, ever unmonitored, anonymous freedom. Never. This you hope and pray they will continue the rest of their lives, as I, as a 45-year-old adult, don't have unmonitored screen usage. But while they are under your care and authority, you have every right to say you're not allowed to have this avenue of secrecy, period. Please listen to me. Their phone is not like their journal, okay? Do they need a private space for them to process thoughts and feelings and stuff like that alone? Sure. I think that can be healthy. That's not their phone. That's not their computer. That's not their iPad, and so on. If their journal could lead them into depths of depravity, if strangers could enter into their journal dialogue with harmful predatory words, then you would never allow them to have a secretive journal. So don't treat their device that way. You don't just have the right to monitor their activity, you have an obligation. So we can get more into the weeds of parenting during Q&A, but I'm trying. It's so hard for me. I know how my teaching can die the death of idealism and not get practical. I'm trying my best not to overwhelm you here. If you as individuals and you as parents put together a thoughtful plan to place boundaries on the boundless nature of technology and bring exposure to the anonymous nature of technology, you have essentially, with those two steps, you have essentially overcome what is unique about modern technology. And you will naturally create healthy relationships between your child and technology. You're training them as the next generation to redeem technology by using it appropriately. Okay, I've got a half hour. You can use it all or you can use none of it to flesh out some of these practicalities if you would like, or ask any questions about anything that we've discussed.
All right.
I'm curious about the utility of smartphones, what you would say about that, because that's where I find myself struggling the most. I'm not on social media. I've tried to cut out all the superfluous phone usage, but more and more I just feel like my day-to-day life, it is required for so many tasks. I'm doing my grocery pickup order, and I'm getting texts from my son's school, and I'm managing an Airbnb, and I have guest message, and you know how it.
100%.
Our modern world runs on our phones.
Yep.
And even listening to what you just said about, you're getting requests on your phone. You're having to manage other people's phone usage on your phone, and you're maybe getting these alerts from friends with the accountability software, and now you're using your screen time to monitor their screen time. So I'm just wondering, I sometimes want to throw my phone out of a window because I hate this and I feel tied to it, but it is how our modern world works. Even in ministry, I'm getting important texts from people that I don't want to be missing saying, please pray for me, this is urgent. So I feel frustrated about this problem, and I wonder how much you would say to fight this aspect of it and go against the grain, or just this is the modern world we live in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think probably to be a salt and light in and among the world, but bearing witness to a different world presence in our society, it probably, the reality of where God has us as strangers and exiles, trying our best to bear witness to the kingdom of God. I think the reality of it is we are going to have to make use of these types. It's so funny. I had one of the major donors to my ministry is a great guy, and he listened to a lot of this content, and he was like, well, I got the answer for you. And he pulls out his flip phone, and he's like, just everybody needs to do this, flip phone, and it takes care of everything. And I said, well, yeah, okay, so here's the deal. You're worth hundreds of millions. You have a personal assistant who takes care of every single detail in your life. You're an empty nester. Your kids are grown up. They're married. They're on. Yeah, I'd probably have a flip phone if I had that too. I don't. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just not the reality for most of us. And so there is a sense in which we're going to have to live as faithful stewards in this world with the world that God has given us. Again, and I said this, I don't think when I went through those paradigms of we can either retreat from culture or receive culture, or we can redeem culture. I absolutely think receiving culture is not an option for the Christian, but there's a case to be made of retreating culture. Like if you want to just say, look, I'm going to simplify our family's life so much, we're going to do the homestead thing and sell our stuff and live off the land and do that. Okay, go for it. I just think it's not practical or possible for so many of us, and so there is a sense in which we're just going to have to do that. But again, even within the boundaries, and notice when I said that, I said this works for me personally because most of I'm not managing an Airbnb. A lot of my time is spent in research and meetings and so forth. So I have the ability to be slow in responding to stuff. But some people, the nature of their job and calling isn't that way. Like you do have to be able to respond quickly. And so the boundaries that you put into place are going to have to look different than that. I just advocate for intentionally being thoughtful. If people are just having these conversations, being thoughtful, putting a plan together, and trying to stick to that plan, it tends to work itself out. But I do think you're onto something with just the utility aspect of this, that this is the way. And we're going to have to figure out how to be faithful followers of Jesus in this crazy world of ours.
Quick question. I really appreciate you opening up about your life and your family life. It's really helpful. A follow-up question to the kids with no screen time during the week. How do you do, so with like teenagers, high schoolers, how do you do texting? Do you include that in screen time, or is that totally different?
Not my teenager. I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. He does not have, he has a phone, but essentially it's a small iPad, doesn't have a number or data or anything like that. My 16-year-old does. And so, yeah, his texting, the texting app, you can set this up, the texting app is exempt during the day. Well, it's turned off during his school hours. If we want to get in touch with him, we have to call the school and talk to him. I know, crazy idea. And if he needs us, he has to go to the office and call us. But the texting feature is shut off during the school day. It comes back on. It's exempt from his screen time usage during when he's not in school as a hard cutoff at 10 o'clock at night.
Okay, so do you do a limit of minutes for that time that it's open, or how? I guess that's more my question. Okay.
Yep.
Would you mind sharing that, or are you comfortable sharing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm comfortable sharing that. So my 16-year-old, again, he just requested to actually bring this down, which was like, boy, do you celebrate parenting wins, right? It was like, oh wait, I thought he was, thought we were making a mess of this child. How about that? So yeah, he came and asked for more limits, but my 16-year-old gets 2 hours of screen time on his phone during the week, and 3 hours on the weekends, and that is any app. If he wants to listen to 2 hours of music, then that's what he chose to do with those 2 hours, and it's off, it's gone. So 2 hours during the week, 3 hours on the weekends. My 8-year-old gets no time during the week and an hour to play around on his iPad on the weekend.
Quick question. We have some similar like that, but it seems like screen time only limits the hour per day. Is there a different feature where you can set up where they get a cumulative during the week, or do you have it set up under different controls?
No, you can customize it. You're talking about.
It seems like I can only limit their amount of time per day instead of shifting it to a total amount of time per week. Is that another option on there to shift the?
Oh, I don't know about that, but we do it per day. But they're customized days.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
okay.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. of course, we're screen-free on Sundays.
Right.
And there's I don't want, like, I really want y'all to understand we struggle with these plans.
No,
okay?
no, I just a practical
you
question.
understand,
I'm
okay.
sure others
Sundays
ask
we're
as well.
screen-free, but like if he goes and hangs out with his friends, something like that, I'll get on there and remove it, and he can text us and call us, stuff like that. Or they asked, we're not legalists. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it's 2 hours. Friday and Saturday, it's 3. Because when he comes home from school after Friday, our school's a very academically challenging school, and candidly, he needs to. We let them on Friday afternoons, Friday nights. But we also we have a ton going on, so usually they don't even use it. But.
Yeah, tracking. Thank you.
Hey, Robert, can you talk a little bit more about partnering with grandparents in this endeavor with boundaries? Like my parents watch our kids every Thursday. They're delightful people in case they're watching this. And we really appreciate
Delightful.
we really appreciate them.
Yes.
Personal testimony.
Salt of the earth.
But they're a little lax with things, and my kids learn words and phrases and things, right? And and it's like, uh-ohs, and I didn't know we're not supposed to, And we've had the talk with my parents and my in-laws a number of times. No one shares this in this room. Do you understand? Happens in this room, stays in this room, but it's...
And the technology live stream.
Ethan is going to edit this out later, but with a $50 bill. So it's one of those things where, like, we really want to partner with them, but we've tried a number of things. But can you expound a little bit more about that and, like, what maybe some strategies or ways to go about it?
This is so situationally dependent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, what I've noticed with my parents, and my children, when we first started having kids, I mean, just by their own health and energy, they were like, our kids would go over to their house and it was just all playtime, all fun, creative games and all stuff. And just now where they are, like, just frankly, their energy and physical ability, they're just not able to do that anymore. And so now it's, it tends to be a movie night or something like that. And sometimes my kids will talk them into a movie that we probably wouldn't have approved or something like that. And in our situation, because, like, my wife's, we're here, and so her parents flew in from Texas to be with them while we're away, and they don't really get much time with our kids. And so with them, I'm pretty just like, I don't know, they're going to be monsters when they get home, and that's okay. We'll go through grandparent detox, and that's okay. I'm just going to let them enjoy their grandkids and get the kids to just, their special memories are when we were with the grandparents, we got to eat whatever we wanted and watch more stuff, stuff like that. I'm totally okay. My parents are a part of, they live in Lexington, and they're a part of our regular routine, and so it's not uncommon for, we have something going on, and after school they get picked up, they get to go home to their house and work on homework and things like that. With my parents, because they're a lot more a part of the routine of our life, I do ask them, have conversations. Would you fit what you do with them within kind of the boundaries and expectations that we've set for our family? Would you join us in that? And they're usually pretty good about that. But it is what it is, and it's okay. It really is okay. You'll regret it when your kids have kids and you just want to spoil them, and your kids are saying, "Arr." So. I just think that's a natural, beautiful part of community. To talk of, like, I'm just glad they're hanging out with their grandparents and think that time's special, and that's okay.
Yeah, question. I'm just wondering, as an observation on the benefits of what you're doing. You started off talking about the two problems of unlimited, boundless capacity and unlimited, boundless desire, okay? And that now sets up the electronic world to take advantage of that, but it's in our nature. Overshadowed by God's desire to create in us an innate need for connection. But what that does is it puts the responsibility on us individually to intentionally manage these new options that we have, that historically technology wasn't there, so we didn't have them in many cases. So my question is, when you limit your children's use of screen time and then say you can use it, have you found that a side benefit is they're beginning to learn how to
Yes.
manage technology in a way that they never could have discovered otherwise?
100%. 100%. So I've, in some ways, without asking for it, I deliver this material quite a bit, and so I think people naturally assume, oh, you must be a Christian family with no screens and really hard lines on this stuff, because I'm kind of become the technology sounding that alarm guy, and so I think people naturally assume that in my parenting, we're just a screenless home and stuff like that, and I believe that that's counterproductive to parenting. I have to teach and train and disciple my children, because again, this is the world that they're going to inherit, and I have to disciple them through proper stewardship of technology, and for that, I have to allow them under my supervision and care to learn how to do that. The analogy I use quite often for parents is, I was talking to somebody who's an expert in, what's an expert in like plants? What are they called? Botanist or something like that. Anyway, they were telling me, they were like, for a plant, for you to grow a plant and it survive in the wild, everybody knows you can't just take a plant and you can't take a seed and plant it in the wild. I mean, its chances of survival are very, very small. Usually that won't work. So you have to have a greenhouse phase where that plant is getting nurtured in the perfect controlled conditions. But what people don't understand is you can't take a plant in the greenhouse and then plant it in the wild. And so what they do is they have like a year or two intermittent stage where they actually bring it out into the elements and let it learn to survive in the elements. Sometimes a big, like we just had in Kentucky last week, a big storm, winter storm's coming through, you got to bring it back into the greenhouse because it's not going to survive that, stuff like that. And you give it this exposure, and then it's ready to be planted and flourish. And I use that analogy quite a bit with parenting, that in those early stages of development, greenhouse, complete, you helicopter parent all you want. Complete control, complete perfect environment for them to flourish. But there has to be, if you just say, when it comes to technology, if you just say, no greenhouse, here's a phone, kid, this is what most American families are doing. Here's a phone, kid, have at it, plant them in the wild, they're never going to survive. But I think a lot of Christians know not to do that, but they don't realize there has to be that intermittent step before they go out on their own, and they have to have some freedom and exposure to these things and work through it, and they'll make mistakes. One of our biggest prayers as parents is that they'll just get caught in their sin, that they'll just get caught in their mistakes. We pray that all the time. We know they're going to do it. Lord, catch them so we can talk them through it. And my kids have made mistakes in this area, and it has led to some of the most fruitful, sanctifying, beautiful conversations that we've ever had as parent and child. And so I am absolutely the guy who advocates for training your children to learn how to steward technology well, to, again, reclaim God's design for technology and redeem technology in their lives. It's really, really important in my belief.
Lily?
Hi, thank you so much for these strategies. I think there's definitely some work I could do to set my own boundaries. But I'm mostly interested, since you're just talking about these training tools for kids. My kids kind of skew on the younger end, but they already love their screen time. And we use it as a tool, where like screen-free during the week, we do it on the weekends and all of that. But also my 9-year-old is asking for these devices because his school friends have. And I watch and all of that. Do you have could you speak to maybe some recommendations of what good training tools might be that are appropriate but have limitations, so I want them to learn. I want them to know how to navigate this, but also I do find the internet to be a deep, dark, scary hole.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, our general parenting principle when it comes to peers and all that stuff is we never want our kids to be the first or the last to the game. We definitely don't want them to be the first. They're the kid who has a phone before any of their peers have a phone, and it's super cool and so much social capital, and they're just awesome, and you destroy them in the process. But we don't want them to be the last, because there is a level of social dynamics going on amongst their peers, and we really don't want them to be the one who's like, I finally got a phone, I'm 15. We don't want them to grow up with that. So they're never first to the game, they're never last to the game. But a real principle, and Jonathan Haidt advocates for this a lot, a really, really good principle is, and this gets back to the whole concept of community. And if you have a school like, if you all have this is it Push Academy? You have Push Academy. It really, a school like that can really benefit, or if you're not in that school and you have public school, the best thing you can do as parents is to host a dinner, call a meeting with all of your peers, all your kids' peers' parents, and get them all together and say, hey, let's together come up with a plan of what we all agree upon when it comes to devices and screen usage and social media and apps and all of that. Can we together come to this? Because our kids are together competing socially with this stuff. And so Jonathan Haidt is big on parents forming a community with their peers to put together a agreed upon plan of usage so that the kids don't feel isolated in this, but every parent is on the same page that this is what we're advocating for at home. But I don't know if you're asking this question. I think you might have been asking this question. Are there safer devices than yes, absolutely. There are some out there. You can do your research of like a smartphone. What's that one? You may know this, somebody may know this, but there's a smartphone that's not an iPhone or an Android, whatever, that is way more limited and protected and all of that stuff. And that absolutely is an option. You just have to weigh the cost and benefit of, if I go that route, my kid will be, he might be the only one among his peers with the strange phone. And like it or not, that's the new social cred. I mean, that is it, is what device do you have, how cool is your device? And so, but if you're comfortable as parents saying, we're okay walking him through that, or her through that, and the weirdness of that and all that stuff, we can handle that, and we want to do that route. There are those options out there. You just have to do your research and find those.
Hey, Robert, I got another question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there time for this, Chad?
Yeah. Yes.
A bit. I work with the students here at CFC, and, and through the years, I've just seen this transition of kids going from doodling 20 years ago while you're talking to them to kids being on their phone while they're talking to them, and you get with them to the side and say, hey, bro, why are you on your phone when I'm trying to engage with you or trying to work with you? And I hear regularly, well, this helps me think, right? And I've heard parents say the same thing to me when I've called out their kid and said, hey, I asked them to get off their phone and they just wouldn't. And the parent's like, well, it helps them think. Can you speak to that? Is anybody with me? Can you speak to that a little bit?
My talk last night, that is the opposite of helping them think. It is hurting their thinking. That's a lot. It's not helping them think. It's helping them be comfortable. Their phone is their security blanket. They don't know how to have conversations. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to look people in the eyes. And their go-to thing is, this is my security blanket, and I can feel comfortable if I have this in my hand and can look and avoid all of the demands of relationships. So they may think it helps us think, but really what it is it's helping them feel comfortable. At school, another piece of legislation we're hopefully going to see through is just banning phones in every Kentucky public schools, and the teachers are very happy about that legislation. I think parents are too. But even at schools, I've talked to many kids who say, when I'm sitting at a table alone, or I'm walking alone, and there's this awkwardness of social isolation, that phone is that comforting tick that allows them to feel that way. So it's not true, but as a youth pastor, it's it's not shaming. It doesn't help you think. That. Let's talk more about that. Let's really, would you be willing to have a conversation? Go out to lunch, coffee, whatever, have a conversation about the phone and what's really going on there, and helping them see this isn't really about helping you think. It's just that you're uncomfortable in conversation. How about we do this? How about we have a monthly coffee date without a phone, and let me help you just have a conversation without your phone and get used to being comfortable doing that without a phone, and just lovingly disciple and training them that way.
Can you speak a little bit about if there's a scenario where if you're a parent, your kid has a smartphone, or do they just have the texting option, but they have a media message allowance, and you find sexting on the phone, or even a grandparent sees it on their grandkid's phone? What do you feel like a reasonable, good, and legal way to go about solving that and working through that would be?
Well, I was ready to answer your question until you said legal. I don't know.
I'm just saying there would be
I don't.
X out the legal part and just
Okay,
say,
yeah,
as
yeah.
a parent,
Okay,
I guess
take
I
out
have
the
to think.
legality of it.
I have to think legally because of youth ministry. Like,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So
well,
we have to
well,
include
I mean,
the
now,
legalities.
I can't
in
speak with authority legally if it's, if there's a age discrepancy there or something like that, like if it's an actual illegal activity. But yeah, so don't listen. Chances are, parents, they will get, again, especially if you pray it. It's a scary prayer to pray, but pray it. Lord, catch them so we can walk with them through this. It's going to happen. It's going to have, statistically speaking, I don't want to say it's going to happen, but statistically speaking, it probably will happen to where you're gonna catch something, you're gonna find something, and you're gonna realize, oh my goodness, my precious child who's now grown up is viewing this. Welcome those moments. Lean into those moments. Do not panic. Do not freak out. Do not let them intuit in your very countenance I'm freaking out, this is the end of your world and life kind of thing. Welcome it, and let it be this amazing core memory that they will always look back on of how my parents responded when I get caught doing the thing that they feared the most. Gospel saturated, no shame, nothing, like just the way I ended that talk on pornography. Loving, gracious, I'm with you. I understand this struggle. I've been there. Let's talk about this. It's an open door for conversations that you've probably been dying to have with your child, but they're locked up or they won't have it. But when they get exposed, they have no choice but to have the conversation. And just gospel saturated, full of love and grace and mercy. Let's work through this together, kind of stuff. I don't fear those moments, parents. Don't fear the exposure of your children. It's uncomfortable, but there's no better time for discipleship and sanctification in your children's life than when they're exposed in humiliating ways.
Robert, maybe one final question, and this one I get a lot from our young moms, especially with young moms with young kids. And it's kind of the tyranny of the urgent they feel, in trying to set some boundaries or limits to their cell phone. And I think one of the things I hear a lot, these young moms will say, Chad, if I set boundaries on my phone, what if my kid has an emergency? I can't miss an emergency, or if the school needs something. What would you say to those pastorally, especially, kids from 1 to, say, 4th grade or 5th grade, right? Of, the freedom that's possible of setting limits, setting boundaries, turning it off when it feels like you just can't do that if you're going to be a responsible parent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would be sensitive if somebody is in the room that asked you that question, but I just disagree. Somehow parents have been able to do parenting without their kids dying for a long time without emergency, immediate connectivity. Somehow it's worked out. And kids grow up and they're fine. But again, technology gives you options here. This is where you can master technology and not the other way around. And there are ways to say, if that's truly a fear of yours, there are ways to say, I mean, my phone is on Do Not Disturb, but my teenage son, I've got it set up so his number will come through. If he needs to get in touch with me, he can get in touch with me. But even if he can't get in touch with me, or he can't get in touch with his mom, he'll be fine. We'll work it out. Yeah. So honestly, and this gets to the technology thing. Technology, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this in my sermon tomorrow. Technology has trained us. It's given us this veneer of control, and it has trained us to believe that we have to be constantly in control. And it's taken away just the age-old Christian virtue of these children belong to you, Lord, not to me. You're in control. I'm not. I can trust you. I don't have to just manage and micromanage my child's life. We're trained in those ways by technology because via technology, it gives us this sense of constant control and clarity, when really parenting is a lot of times you feel out of control and you don't have clarity from the Lord of what the heck is going on. And you're just going to have to trust the Lord. So I would even maybe push back a little bit and say, hey, maybe this could be a sanctifying exercise in trusting the Lord, that your kid's going to be okay. So.
Great answer. Last one, Claudia. And we'll wrap up with this one.
Can you help us with the research part and maybe give us a list of those apps that limit and monitor that you like or that work really well?
You mean the monitoring apps?
Monitoring and limiting what you're doing. What apps are you using? So
yeah. So the limiting stuff that we're talking about, where you like have certain hours of screen time usage and all that stuff, that's actually built into your phone. Again, you might have to invite a college student from your church over for lunch to teach you how to set that up. Oh, you're pointing. Okay, but that's actually built. Oh, yeah, you were telling me you help people with this. That's built into the phone. Every smart device has built-in limitations and protections that you can utilize very effectively. The monitoring software is something that you install on the device, and basically you give that software, that app, access to your screen, and so that it can monitor what's going on the screen and send reports and all that stuff. That's something you do have to download external. The most popular ones are NetNanny. That I personally, I've found that can be a little frustrating one. I don't think the technology is as good. It's glitchy, and it can be frustrating and annoying. But NetNanny is a really popular one. The one we use is Covenant Eyes. I think that they're definitely their customer service is the best. But I think their technology has proven to be the best. But the one that I've yet to look into it, but I'm telling you, parents are raving about it, is Bark, B-A-R-K. Have you heard of that? I hear that's an amazing thing. But they're getting better. And they're out there. They really are. So you just got to find that. But the actual screen time usage and protections and all that stuff, that can all be done on the device itself. You just have to learn how to set it up.
Yeah, we've got a handful of young families in the church that have been using Bark, and they love it.
And they love it, yeah.
Yeah, they've raved about it. All right, a few things to wrap up. First, just a quick anecdote when you said never be first to the game, last to the game. 2 years ago, a high school boy, one of the boys I coach at Push, we were talking about this, and he said, Coach, do you know what it's like when you ask a girl out and she gives you your phone number, and then you're like, oh, that's great. Here's my Gmail.
Right.
You don't think about these things in their world, right? And just how it's hard for them and stuff. So Anyway, a few things. As you know, Robert, one of the things that's great, Daniel Keniston from our school reached out, and they're going to be putting together some videos, some equipping things to get this into our school and get the kids talking about it. Super excited. Robert agreed to that. So he is going to be heading out, so he won't be around, but he will be here tomorrow. He's preaching both services. So if you have some things you really want to ask him about or tomorrow, he'll be around, okay? And again, like we talked about, the tragedy would be just to come and talk about this a lot as an individual or as a couple here, and then you never bring it back up. And so I really encourage you, when you go home today, take 15 minutes and go, all right, what are two things as an individual, what are one or two questions he made me think about in my life that I want to commit to write down and just start thinking about weekly? And maybe you say, hey, Monday night or Monday morning, you're going to bring those questions up and just start thinking about them. And then as a couple or marriage of grandparents or parents, what are one or two questions that he stirred that you need to begin to think about in your parenting and your family as a couple that you commit to start talking about once a week, right? Make a commitment to take a couple questions once a week, and you'll find some really good gold, I think, that'll come out of this. So once again, I think without further ado, can you give Robert just a big hand of applause? Such an honor to have you, and you did a phenomenal job. Thank you. We really appreciate how you loved us well and helped equip us. So, Todd, you want to come on up and pray for us to head on out?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to listen to these things. Lord, these are things that impact our world in ways that they're happening to us too fast for us to really be able to understand them. I'm grateful for Robert to be able to come out here to Tucson for us, to be able to help us make sense of some of these things that the system of the world is bringing upon us and refocus us upon you and your kingdom and your purpose for creation. Lord, I pray that you bless us through this day. Help us to be thoughtful about these things we've learned, and in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.